Good evening. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Major Applications Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Eddie Lowry, Committee Chairman. We are live on YouTube, I am told, so welcome to anyone who's spending their evening watching us in that way. There might be somebody out there. Can I do apologies for absence first, please?
Apologies from Councillor Melvin with Councillor Hagger substituting.
Thank you. Can I do declarations of interest? No, that's good. The minutes of the meeting 17th of July were in your bundles. Can I take those as agreed? Thank you. The agenda we are considering tonight, which is the same one as was published by the Head of Planning. There have been no changes. They're all Part 1 items and they're all, therefore, in the public domain. There's one petition item tonight, which is the first item, item 6. Petitioners have 5 minutes to address us. 4 with green, 1 with amber, and we get to red, they're done. There are no ward councillors that I've seen around, and I'm not sure that there are any coming for this one. On the petition item, the applicant also has the right to address us, regardless of whether the petitioners choose to exercise their right. Health and safety, usual announcements. The fire alarm goes off. There are no tests, so we're assuming it's real. Fire exit there, fire exit behind me, and we normally go straight down the stairs in front of us, around the spiral staircases, the fastest way out of this building. Now, please ask now that all mobile phones are switched off, or at least silent. And I think that will. And I'm just checking mine is as well. Mine is, because I didn't want to get caught by that one. Okay. What? Behave. Right. Voting members of committee tonight are, starting on my left, Councillor Duncan, Councillor Morse, Councillor Osborne, then going down the table this way, we have Councillor Edwards, Councillor Hagger, Councillor Tuckwell, Councillor Higgins, and Councillor Goddard. The officer team tonight, Richard Michalski is doing highways, Zainab Hajjad Ismail, right, get it right. Principal Planning Officer is our presenting officer tonight. Mandip Malhotra is sitting in for James Roger and therefore will be providing advice tonight. Anissa Ted, Chief of Democratic Services, our clerk, and Nicole Cameron is our legal advisor, whom we haven't seen for a little while, but welcome back. Okay. I'm going to crack on with item 6, which is land at Harmondsworth, Holloway Close. This was the one that had additional plans circulated, which hopefully all members have had. Good?
Okay, thank you, Chair. So, introducing item 6, which is land at Harmondsworth Close, Harmondsworth, Holloway Close. The planning permission is sought for a phased mineral extraction on Greenbelt land. The proposal seeks to extract minerals for a period of 8 years over 2 phases and restoration over a period of 3 to 4 years. The whole of the site is within Greenbelt land, and there is also proposed to be a minerals processing plant on site. Following the 12-year period, within the 12-year period, it is proposed that the site is also restored to agricultural use. With this item, it's important to note that the site is allocated within the local plan, Emerging Local Plan Part 2 Site Allocations document for minerals extraction. It's considered it is acceptable within the Greenbelt, so the mineral extraction is an appropriate use within the Greenbelt. However, the minerals processing plant is inappropriate development. The applicant has provided very special circumstances which has been considered by officers. As part of the very special circumstances case, it's proposed that by having the plant on site, it will reduce the need for highways movements and therefore the impact on the highway network will reduce. The plant machinery itself is proposed to be low, so it isn't going to have a visually intrusive impact on the surrounding area and the Greenbelt. It is also proposed to store soil bunds across the perimeter of the site therefore reducing its visual impact again. Given the temporary nature of the operation, the applicant has sufficiently demonstrated that there are very special circumstances that outweigh the potential harm to the openness of the greenbelt. On this basis, the proposal is recommended for approval. I would like to draw members' attention to the addendum item for item 6, and there are a couple of conditions that are being tidied up. That includes condition 2, where the appropriate plans have been correctly referenced, condition 11 to include a new site survey, condition 16 has been amended so it is sufficiently robust in terms of vehicle washing before they leave and join the highway network. Condition 15 is amended so that the restoration, the soil being imported to the site is free of contaminants. Condition 23 has been amended so it's sufficiently robust to ensure the right restoration scheme is agreed by the council, and there is clarification on highways where the highways officer has raised no issue. On this basis, the recommendation is for approval. I'm happy to take any questions. Just running through the plan as well. This sets out the constraint plan. This shows that it's within the green belt. The location plan shows that it's the south of the M4. This provides the site context. This shows the site access into the site. There's only one point of access. This is the existing site plan, so it is an open site at the moment. These are illustrative cross-section plans of what is proposed to be provided on site, and you can see the bunds on either side, which will limit the visual impact, and it shows the proposed processing plant as well. This is an indicative plan of the temporary structures that are proposed on site. Here's another plan showing that, and this is an indicative plan of the proposed restoration, notwithstanding it will be agreed as required by condition 23. This shows the 2 phases for minerals extraction, and this shows phase 3 and 4. Here's a bird's eye view of the existing plan and some photographs of the existing site. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
It's all right. We'll save those for a little later. Okay. Petition on this one. Phil Rumsey or Geraldine Nicholson, if you'd like to come up to the table and press the button on the middle of the microphone when you're ready, and we will time from this end.
Okay, this site is 82 metres from my front door. It is lovely and green, as you've seen. It's right next to Saxon Lake. It's beside a public footpath that people use regularly. We use that footpath to access Harmondsworth from West Drayton, and we use that footpath to access the Harmondsworth Moor Park. This development, as residents, in our opinion, is not suitable. It will destroy basically one of the only bits of greenbelt we have. We are in the south of the borough in the air quality management area, which comes under Heathrow. We suffer from air quality issues from Heathrow and all the related traffic, plus all the noise. We don't think that added HGV movements on that particular part of the road network is suitable. It doesn't matter if it's one movement or 2 movements. Since this application first went in November 2017, there are a lot of studies being released on the detrimental effect of fine particulates from HGVs on children, adults, breathing, etc., etc. So we don't think that this is suitable to add HGVs. It also becomes a bottleneck as well during rush hour, and I note that the hours of operation include rush hour. it's a safe route to school for children from that side of the M4 going to schools in West Drayton. The other thing that we have, and this is the main thing, I think if this application is approved, it flies in the face of all the good work we are doing to fight Heathrow expansion. I spoke to Heathrow yesterday, and they're in cahoots with the applicant. This suits Heathrow very well because this is one of Heathrow's Borough pits and stockpiling sites for Heathrow expansion. I think you have to ask yourselves, why is it only going to take 8 years to extract? It will never be restored to the green land that it is now if Heathrow get their way, which they won't. So we don't think that the applicant has any intention of restoring it to the way it is at the moment, because they believe, and they do work with Heathrow, that this will do Heathrow's work for them. So this basically is Heathrow expansion by the back door. They're starting early, and this application could have gone in years and years ago, and we are very sceptical of the timing of this. This particular site then, if Heathrow does expand, becomes their thermal storage, so it has to be dug out for them anyway. So Boyers or whoever it is that are doing the application will be doing the Heathrow's work for them, and it won't cost Heathrow a penny to do it. That is basically in a nutshell. 5 minutes isn't very long, but that's it. Thank you. And we don't want you recommending it.
So you've done it in 3, so therefore you're well within. Do members have any questions? Councillor Morse.
This is grade 1 agricultural land.
Yeah.
What level of agricultural activities is there on the site?
Well, up until they put a big green fence around it around about 18 months ago, it was farmed quite regularly. It was left fallow 1 year, and then it was farmed the following year. It's quite a good site for that usage. But this big green fence suddenly appeared, and sheep were on it.
Okay, thank you very much
Thank
indeed. Anyone here on behalf of... Can you just turn that microphone off for me, please? Yeah. Thank you. Anyone here on behalf of the agent or the applicant?
My name is James Sutton and I work for the applicant Hillingdon Valley, and my role at the company is to develop mineral sites. I note the thorough committee report from the planning officer, which has presented a clear overview of the proposed development, and so these details will not be repeated. I'd like to inform the committee of the company I work for, Hillingdon Valley, who are a mineral operator and a reclamation specialist company dedicated to high standards and ensuring their schemes are completed within their allocated timescales. Hillingdon Valley produce approximately up to 1 million tonnes a year of construction aggregates, which is principally sand and gravel. These source sites are primarily located around the M25 orbital motorway and are developed in order to help support the demanding construction industry within Greater London. The company also receive up to 2 million cubic metres of construction, demolition and excavation CDE materials per year, with these arisings principally sourced from the excavation sector, which are required to facilitate the restoration of mineral sites and quarries. The government recognise that a steady supply of mineral is essential, and great weight should be given to mineral extraction in view of its contribution to the economic well-being of the country. Hillingdon Valley is an active member of the London Aggregates Working Party, and as such is aware of the demand for mineral resources within the Greater London area, as well as the importance of maintaining a steady supply of aggregates within boroughs such as Hillingdon. Whilst there may be some difference of views regarding the processing plant, the company believe there are a number of very special circumstances to justify the inclusion of the processing plant. These can be summarised as the very low land bank, which requires urgent supply, the careful design of the scheme, which reduced the impact on openness, and a reduction in HGV movements. This list is not comprehensive. The proposed development is also temporary, so there will be no permanent residual impact on the greenbelt. Concerns have also been raised from local residents in the form of petition, which refers to the Heathrow expansion and third runway. However, I would like to make it clear that the proposed quarry has been designed to have a very limited impact on Harmondsworth Village and is totally independent of the Heathrow proposals. The site is identified as suitable for mineral working in the development plan, and the company believe the submitted proposals for Harmondsworth Quarry have provided a suitable scheme that will meet the immediate need for further reserves of sand and gravel, and that the site is a good example of sustainable development and making best use of a finite resource. The company are confident the design of the restoration scheme will return the land to high-quality agricultural use and will preserve the quality of the indigenous soils. The margins of the restored landform will be strengthened to increase biodiversity, for example, a new hedgerow planting along the western boundary and a swale drainage feature which includes aquatic planting along the southern boundary. The company are aware of community concern with regards to projects of this nature and are happy to keep the local community updated with new information through contact with the local parish council and/or a resident association. Lastly, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for listening, and I hope you will follow the recommendation of your officer.
Questions? Anyone? Oh, God. I've got selection now. We'll go down the table because that's easier for me to remember. Councillor Oswald.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, James, thanks for the presentation. I think we're quite clear on where you're coming from, obviously, because the report says what it says. My colleagues already said that this is, excuse me, Grade 1 agricultural land and will be reinstated when you've finished after 8 years, hopefully. We're used to gravel extraction in the south. We don't always like it, but we've had it over the years, and so we know what it's like. We know what to expect, and we like what we see most of the time when the land has been reinstated, and that's important because this is Grade 1 agricultural land, as my colleague has said. So this will be conditioned. So you will have to do it, and you better make sure that you do it, because otherwise we'll be coming back to you. Can I just ask you?
I was going to say, could I have the question?
Yeah. Can I just ask you that? Is there any record of this being done elsewhere, where you've had to restore Grade 1 agricultural land? Thank you.
Yeah, the company is very active in the reclamation sector, and we have restored sites in East London particularly. One was taken back to agricultural land where the farmer is now growing potatoes again in the field. We've also worked closely with the Forestry Commission in East London, where we are creating a brownfield regeneration programme, which is restoring old quarry sites and returning them to public open space as well. So the company have done a variety of restoration, and the other scheme the company have done is a PGA-approved golf course down in East London as well. So it shows the variety of schemes where the company have restored land successfully.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Morse?
My question, but I'm going to slightly change it. These sites you've worked in East London, have they been Grade 1 agricultural land that's been restored? Because I want to find out if that has actually been done and where.
The site I know we've returned to agricultural land. I'm not 100% sure that it was Grade 1, but I could find out for you and confirm.
Yeah, mine was
different
the same
question.
but I also wanted to ask about noise, protecting residents from further noise, both to the north, where I realise there is a motorway, and to the south. There are cottages houses not too far to the south. Thank you.
Yeah, so there will be a noise monitoring scheme. So the nearest sensitive noise properties are subject to every 3 months a noise assessment will be carried out by an independent consultant, and then their results will then feed back whether the mitigation needs increasing or we're within those limits, and that's done quarterly throughout the development. So you have a record of if there's any breach of noise or whether you're maintaining it at all times.
And can I ask, these are known operators. You know them.
So Ingrebourne Valley is the operator itself. So do you mean the company's? Yeah. Yes. So the company, in terms of the material that would be brought in, the company only deal with account-only customers. So it's only companies that we've used in the past and that hold a good track record with ourselves. So there's no one that could just turn up and purchase aggregate or bring in reclamation materials.
It's more the reclamation materials, because it's all about the quality of reclamation, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you've got a track record in that with the people you deal with, and it's not just people turning up in lorries and...
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Edwards?
Thank you, Mike. It's a simple question, I hope. The processing plant, which I don't actually understand what the nature of that is, will you be importing any materials to be processed on site?
So the processing plant simply washes the sand and gravel, which is the materials on site. The only material that would be treated, to some of the reclamation materials that may be brought in, they may be screened with a dry mobile screener to upgrade the reclamation material. And on a campaign basis, you may import a crusher on a campaign basis to reduce the size of the oversize. But that's the only treatment of materials you'll be doing other than the washing of the processing plant.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, just a quick question. I didn't realise we were going to be asking you so much, interrogating you. But anyway, the petitioner actually mentioned the fact about this moving the gravel and the dust that can be created by movement of that stuff. I mean, can you explain to us how you minimise that?
Yes, so part of the planning conditions there will be a dust management scheme, and there will be further details that we'll submit to the planning department, which will be approved. So, for instance, we'll be checking weather conditions. We'll have a water bowser on site that dampens down activities in periods of dry weather, windy weather. Obviously, certain operations are stopped, and that whole list would be submitted to the council, which would be approved and then secured for the lifetime of the development.
Councillor Goddard.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to return to the question of the reinstatement, please. You say there's a track record of having done this in the past. Has your company been in the habit of offering some sort of financial guarantee or bond for that with these reinstatements? I mean, if, for example, the company were to get into financial difficulties, perhaps the reinstatement may not happen.
We wouldn't necessarily, because I think bonds are only sought in exceptional circumstances in the NPPF, but we have on occasion had Section 106 agreements which could be dealt with, but we wouldn't necessarily use a bond, no.
Okay, I think you've answered all the questions. Thank you. No, you're done. There are no ward councillors present, so I'm going to open it up. Who wants to start me off? Councillor Higgins, followed by Councillor Haggard.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot we can do here, but I just want to know some of the things that have been brought up. Can officers please guarantee that the conditions are strong enough for these to be implemented, to make sure that all these wonderful things that have been offered are actually going to happen? Because, I mean, we've got this, as my fellow councillor said about the 106 agreement for protection. What type of protection do we have to make sure that it is reinstated to grade 1 soil?
I'll take Councillor Haggard's question, and then we'll pick up the.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, can you just confirm that the footpath is staying where it is? There's no change. I've looked at the map and it's still there. Still access routes and everything, the footpath?
Yes, I can confirm the access and the footpath will remain where it is. That's not going to change during the development or after.
Lovely. And can I just confirm as well, we've got one point of access in and out. We're quite happy with that too, aren't we? There won't be any congestion coming in and out.
Yes. Richard can take that question.
Yes, sure. Thank you very much. Yes, for the level of intensity that's predicted, we don't, as the Highways Authority, we don't envisage any particular issue. So.
Thank you.
Councillor Duncan?
Yes, I noticed that earthworks are only taking place limited hours. So is this restricted to all works on this site?
Yes, I think, subject to Amanda for agreeing, if you want us to ensure that the earthworks is changed so it's the development hereby approved, we can...
I think as long as people can have a noise-free weekend as far as possible, because there are residential properties in the vicinity. That's one point that I would like to be considered, please. The other is on condition 15. It says all imported soil shall be inspected and tested for chemical contamination. I don't know if there's any other kind of contamination. I mean, you can get things like lead and all sorts of stuff, can't you?
That would be chemical, though, wouldn't it?
Would it count as chemical?
Chemical or mineral? Yeah, it's chemical.
Well, whatever heading it comes under, if all kind of contaminants can be included. And also, can this be done independently to the satisfaction of the LPA? It just says that it's submitted to and approved by the LPA. Because sadly, I'm not saying in this case or in connection with these kind of developments, but we are becoming aware that certain things are being submitted as being acceptable and really they're not. So that has to be beefed up a bit, if I can use that expression, so that if necessary, there can be an independent check which would be paid for. If that can be done, please. I know we've had, well, quite major problems on some sites. I won't refer to that because this is different people, but we'd just like to safeguard against
Okay,
that,
I'll
I
take
think.
the legal officer's comments before I move on.
I agree that the condition can be amended and it can be a much stronger condition. You might just want to put in the condition to be approved in writing by the local planning authority, so that then you have the written confirmation, and it's only the written confirmation that would be the approved strategy or whatever it is that we need the approval of. That will strengthen it too, so you have a record of it. And then in terms of the contaminants, you could change that. That would be perfectly acceptable if you didn't want it to just be chemical.
Is that condition 15? Yeah. Okay. Now I've got.
Yeah.
Let me just make sure I capture this lot and I want to make sure I've got committee agreement for where we are. I've at the moment got we're going to have to delegate the head of planning. No, actually, I'll change that in a minute. I'm going to ask them that we'll see them. Condition 14 needs amending to be all activities, not just earthwork activities. In other words, we don't want any activity on this site outside the hours. 15 will need some work to ensure it is as robust as possible and covers every possible.
And is as independent as
possible.
Please,
Yeah, but we
Chairman.
need to get some revised wording there. The other one that I can't see, and I'm not getting any nods to my right to say it's in here, is noise monitoring. Is that in there?
Noise monitoring isn't in here as a condition. It's an approval as part of the environmental statement. So under condition 2, we've secured that you must develop in accordance with the environmental statement. That is where the noise monitoring survey work that the applicants have agreed to undertake is secured. If you want to do it as part of condition 14 as a second part, that would also be fine, but we have had the information already.
I think it would be best, given the sensitivity of this, we're going to approve it, that it's absolutely clear.
Yeah.
And I think a robust condition that we can all evidence rather than a report that we will never be able to find is better.
Yes, Chair, could I ask, we would need to know, it's no good monitoring things if it isn't laid down what is acceptable and unacceptable in that monitoring.
Yeah, well,
it's fine to monitor it, but if it's unacceptably noisy, what is unacceptably
I think
noisy
we need a
and
wording.
Councillor Edwards, please.
Thank you, Chairman. There's a few issues for seeking information. Firstly, can officers let me know whether or not the extraction of aggregates at this site is necessary for us to meet the London Plan targets, or will this deliver excess aggregates above our target?
This is in line with the London Plan targets, so it isn't delivering excess. It's part of that.
Thank you very much. That's most helpful. The plans that for the buildings, these are minor because they're probably not going to be seen to any great extent, are all marked as typical. And it allows alternatives to the actual diagram shown with dimensions that could vary, which it seems that I'd be approving anything that they want to put in. Is that the case, or are we more specific here?
I'll be honest, we did have a discussion about this in the office, and because the dimensions are stated on the plans and because they will be temporary and not very visible, we were content that the size is secured, albeit the fabric isn't, the fabric being something that wouldn't be seen from the public view anyway.
Also, often they will change around as the phases change, so we expect that the dimensions, the building, the physical building will be no bigger than or larger than this, but as they move through the phases, they may switch where the temporary buildings are situated on site.
Do we have any control to that extent? Because all it says here is dimensions vary. It doesn't state that this is a maximum size.
We can condition that the sizes shall be, or the dimensions of the building shall be no greater than shown on said plans.
That would suit me fine, thank you very much. Post-restoration, the maintenance of the external ditches which are necessary to the prevention of groundwater flooding, who's responsible after the 5-year period, and what happens if they're not maintained?
So we would be enforcing against the applicant within the 5-year period should they not restore the land over that period of time, and that's the period of time where we have, which is reasonable to have some element of control. Hopefully within those 5 years the work is completed in accordance with the restoration plans, and if it isn't, after those 5 years it would fall away. So we have enforcement powers to make sure the works are completed within those 5 years, post-completion.
Accepted, but the ditches are here to control the groundwater flooding, and it says that during the 5 years they've got to be kept free of silt, otherwise it can add to... My question is, what happens after 5 years? Is it possible that there is no more silt, or that it's down to the landowner? If so, who is it? Do they accept that responsibility? What's the problem?
It's down to the landowner, but the legal officer will confirm.
It would be down to the landowner. The responsibility would fall over after that 5-year period.
No, that's fine.
And it's not reasonable for us to go beyond that.
That's fine. No, that's fine. That's fine. That's great. And also, in the report, the Environment Agency mentioned a number of conditions, and I couldn't see their condition 2 and 3 being replicated. But it could be that it's not necessary, it's been incorporated in some of the other conditions. Can you just please confirm that all of the Environment Agency's observations have been noted and have been appropriately conditioned? Thank you.
I can confirm that there is a lot of duplication between our own internal sustainability officers' request for conditions and the Environment Agency, so we've tried our best to amalgamate and not duplicate.
Councillor Higgins, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I did ask a question which I don't seem to have an answer yet. Which was basically what we're all adhering to at the end, is that the restoration of this project, are the conditions in here strong enough? Obviously, I've just been sitting here and all of a sudden we found that one of the conditions even isn't done,
well,
and we have to put it in. So my question is the condition here,
yes,
and is the 106 agreement needed, as my fellow councillor said, or a bond affected to make sure that this is put back to what it is? That's my question, and it hasn't been answered yet.
I feel that the conditions are sufficiently robust. We have been through the Environment Agency as well as our own internal sustainability officer to make sure that the conditions are as robust as possible. For that reason, we don't feel that there is the trigger for needing a Section 106 agreement.
My only query looking at...
I agree. The position is covered by the conditions. I don't think the bond is actually necessary. We have bonds in relation to other matters, travel plans, etc., but it's not necessary here. The conditions are strong enough, and you also have you have the Environmental Agency, etc., all their rules, their regulations. It's well structured and it's well covered, and I would argue that the amendments that have been dealt with today would make the conditions even stronger. They were fine as they were, and now they're stronger, so I would say that we're in a good position.
The only thing I might suggest is when we're looking at the rewording of these, we look at 18, because the words Grade 1 agricultural land don't actually figure in it at all. So I think if we are, and I think I get the sense from committee that's what we are expecting to see, I think somewhere along the line it needs to actually say that, because otherwise you could approve a scheme that is beautiful but actually isn't Grade 1 agricultural land in any shape or form. So I would be proposing, unless I'm told I can't, I'd be proposing that as an amendment. Sorry, did you have some more, councillors? I've got Councillor Tuckwell hold.
No questions.
Okay. Councillor Tuckwell?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It kind of builds on the conversation around conditions. I mean, we've had the conversation around the quality of the conditions, the sheer volume that we've got in front of us. I mean, I'd like to know what is the process to monitor them. and how do we ensure that they are complied with as we go through this process?
They have to be submitted for approval in the first instance, so therefore they will be approved. The permit, to some extent, will monitor, so that's the environmental permit separate to planning, will monitor the conditions around the site. If there are concerns, we will investigate whether there are any breaches of planning condition, and that's the process by which we will monitor compliance.
Okay, Councillor Morse.
Bearing in mind this has to be taken back to Grade 1 agricultural land, what powers do we have if we don't have a bond to actually enforce this? And who's going to actually measure that this is now Grade 1? Because I've been persuaded not to resist this on the basis that we can go back to square one. I'm just not totally convinced that we can go back to square one.
If that condition wasn't complied with, or any of the conditions aren't complied with, we can serve a breach of condition notice. Now, to establish whether there's a Grade 1, it's Grade 1 agricultural status, we could employ experts, or there may even be experts that are actually in-house that would be able to establish whether what they've done brings it up in line with Grade 1 and also in line with the scheme under Condition 18. So we have powers as the local authority to enforce that breach.
We go back to what Councillor Duncan said, is that I can't remember which one of you said it, about if the company goes under or there's a problem with it was you, was it? Sorry, Barry. What do we do then? I mean, it's all right having all these conditions to make them do something, but if they've gone into liquidation or something, or the landowner's done a bunk, what are we going to do then? And this is why I think we keep going around this, is that we need even if it's a 106, I don't mind if it's not a bond, but at least it's something that we have in our documentation that says, you've got to do this is where the funding is, then we go forward.
My only comment would be that permission lies with the land, not with the owner. Therefore, it would the permission, the conditions, and everything around the consent would transfer to whoever owns the land post-liquidation. So it's always going to be someone's responsibility.
But not ours. That's the point, isn't it? I mean, as the petitioner said, it could be brought up by Heathrow. We don't.
Let's keep Heathrow out of this,
yeah,
please.
I know, I'm not, but that's just a hypothetical situation.
No.
I'm just trying to say that it could be brought up by anybody, couldn't it?
Yeah, it could.
Right, there you go. So, again, we're not taking responsibility. We're saying, we've put everything in place, but if it goes wrong, well, we'll try, but we just need to have something a bit more substantial.
Well, the legal officer has given guidance that she believes that it is not appropriate, so I'm not left with too many places to go.
I just don't think it would meet the test. You have no evidence that it may happen or that it is to happen, and I don't think that a bond is necessary. You've got the conditions here, which you've all had some input into amending them, and I completely understand your point, but I just don't think that we would meet the statutory tests to ask for that bond, and if we want to go away and defer this to consider the position in more detail, then we can do that. But that's not my advice. I would suggest that what we have before us is sufficient to protect the council's position going forward, and also the residents.
We'll draw this to a close.
Yeah, I will. That's fine. It's just last thing. Is there any way that can be done with the head planning and yourself and the Labour lead, that we can actually check that our fears are subsided?
It would have to come back.
It would have to come back if that changed. Let me propose something else, and that may do it. Two things. I'll propose something else before us. I don't think anyone has at this moment come up with anything that says that we're going in any direction other than the officer report. At least I haven't heard anything. I've heard a lot of technical queries, but I haven't heard that we can go against this. I have on my notepad that condition 14 needs amending to be all activities and some commentary around noise monitoring. I have a note on condition 15 that that needs reworking and strengthening. There was an additional condition required in respect of dimensions of plant to make sure that we know what we're agreeing, and that we need 18 looking at to make sure that at least the right words appear in there. I'm going to ask, given the sensitivity of this, that I think that the head of planning needs to come back to myself and the Labour lead to be seen to make sure we are happy with them before they go forward, and they don't disappear into they get lost. Now, I'll take guidance from the legal officer. Whether the legal officer does want to see if anything else can be done, what I would suggest, rather than have this bouncing backwards and forwards, is that if the legal officer's guidance changes, it'll need to come back anyway, because it'll have to be subject to an S106. But I would ask that once the legal officer and the head of planning and whoever else needs to look at it have considered the position, that they come back to myself and the Labour lead and confirm what the revised guidance is. Obviously, if we are suggesting an S106, it'll need, the whole application has to come back, but I don't want, otherwise we're just going to bounce it around and we won't get any further. Councillor Higgins.
On that note, I would actually, with those changes, I would put this application forward for approval.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Oswald. Did you have anything else, Councillor Roberts? You were fine. Okay. All those in favour of approval, please show me. Oh, that's everybody. Thank you. Right. That's the first one done. Right. Item 7 is a deed of variation on the Nestle site, Nestles Avenue, Hayes. Who's going to explain the technicalities of this one?
Okay, so item 7 relates to the former Nestles. It's a deed of variation to the original permission that was granted in June 2018 for 1,386 dwellings and 22,663 square metres of commercial floor space. There was a Section 106 agreement in place. This application seeks a deed of variation to the legal agreement. The key changes, there are two key changes. The first is the wording of affordable housing. So the provision has increased to 40% following receipt of grant funding. So this element is being added to the 106 and it is being amended. And the second variation is to residential phasing plan. This is to allow an additional phase to the development, so Sandow Square can come forward ahead of the other phases separately, and allow access for pedestrians and fire services. So just to show you how that will work, these are the floor plans, and that's showing all of the affordable housing and the mix of affordable housing between shared ownership and other tenures. It's right across the development. And this is the phasing plan that is being amended. So a new phase 4A is coming forward, and that is to allow Sandow Square to come forward ahead of. So just to show you where Sandow is, it's the middle. It's a grey in the middle, so it's this element here. On this basis, so no objection has been raised by the access officer or the SIL and Section 106 officer. It complies with the policies within the development plan, and accordingly, recommendation is for approval, subject to the deed of variation. I'll take any questions if there are any.
Has anybody got any? It's technical, I think, largely, and good news, the affordable housing has gone up. Councillor Duncan?
Yes, I'm very pleased it's increased. Could you, on the original one, I think we had 30% affordable housing.
35.
Of which
35, yeah.
Of which 30% was rented. So in other words, in the overall scheme, we had 10%, which was rented, affordable rented. And that seemed a very low proportion, because this was above density, and if you approved development above density, you meant to have more affordable housing. It was also release of strategic industrial land, and if you release strategic industrial land, you meant to have more affordable housing. So in this, it's gone up to 40%. How much more of it is going to be rented? Because it's rented accommodation that is needed at an affordable rent. I mean, I accept all the thing about shared ownership, and that's fine. But really, in this borough, and particularly, with the housing pressures that we have, it's rented accommodation, affordable rented accommodation.
I think there is no increase in rented accommodation, which is the key point, but the scheme is policy compliant because the 35% that we can control it was policy compliant, so it secured the 30% rented accommodation. That is not changing under this application.
Thank you very much for that advice. So it's really not changed the rented situation at all?
No, it's changed the other.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Edwards?
I was going to say that these are, I accept very much what Councillor Duncan has said, and we would like to have seen some more rented accommodation, but there's no obligation and there's no ability of us to increase that. Therefore, I would suggest we go with the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. Seconder for that, please. Thank you, Councillor Goddard. All those in favour, please clearly show. Is that everybody? Yes, everybody. Thank you. Right, we now move to the next substantive item, which is agenda item 8, which is land off Thompson Road. It's basically in the former RAF Uxbridge site, so let's clarify exactly where we are.
So the next item is item 8, which is land off Thompson Road. The application seeks to provide a Part 5, Part 7 storey building which would deliver 72 assisted living or extra care apartments with associated communal facilities falling within use class C2 and 54 car parking spaces, associated access and landscaping. The provision of specialist retirement accommodation on this site was established through the outline consent for the wider St Andrews site in 2012. The principle of C2 supported or extra care apartments on this site has already been accepted. It is also acknowledged that there is an identified need in this borough for extra care accommodation. That's come through the strategic housing market assessment. The proposed development is considered to be an appropriate size, scale and height and design. It makes a positive contribution to the area through its design, and the proposal preserves the amenities of neighbouring residents. Details are outlined within the officer's report, and attention is also drawn to the addendum for this item. So the addendum for this item 8, it clarifies aspects. So the SIL and Section 106 officer has confirmed there is no SIL for this because we don't have a charge for C2. The condition 6 is being amended, so there's an electric override mechanism and 10 disabled car parking spaces. Condition 8, which sought to control the opening hours for the commercial aspects of this on this site, it's not considered necessary, so it's been removed. There is an additional condition making sure that there is a car parking management plan and an allocation plan so that healthcare, any visitors and healthcare visitors can park. Yes, and there is a new condition limiting it to just C2 for the purposes of extra care, because there is permitted development rights to move from C2 to other types of C2. There is a new condition being added for servicing and refuse. On that basis, the recommendation is for approval subject to Section 106. I'm happy to take any questions. Yes, I'm just going to run you through the plans, of course. So, it's, as you can see, it's situated to the north of St Andrews Road and to north of the triangle site to the south. This is the proposed block plan, and you can see it has been centred around the TPO trees. To the north is the vacant units, and there is a sufficient separation distance that has been maintained, and there is a sufficient separation distance with a road in between these residential units and the proposed block. So this is the lower ground floor plan with the undercroft car parking, the layout, which includes some amenities for residents at ground floor level. It's arranged around the trees. This is the proposed elevation on elevations. Bird's eye view of the existing plan. This shows views looking north to the vacant building, so should they come back into use, they're not going to be affected because a sufficient distance has been maintained. This is the view looking west, and these are the TPO trees that are being retained. View looking south, and this is the triangle building to the south. It's in keeping with this site. Yes, and the recommendation is for approval, so if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Okay, can I just, the new condition, I know the intention of it, but it doesn't actually say, in terms of parking allocation management plans, that actually we do want to ensure there is parking for visitors, including healthcare professionals and others. And I think that wording would be appropriate, given that that's part of the intention of having it, is to make sure that there will be a number of visitors to this on a regular basis, and they will need somewhere to park. So could I just ask for that change to be incorporated? We're happy to delegate to the head of planning to sort it out, but I think that would just, for clarity, make sense. With that, I will open it up. Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Chairman. The concern I have is really an observation about the existing level of congestion at peak times of the day in terms of traffic moving down St Andrews Road and onto Park Road, particularly I think caused by parents either dropping off children at John Locke Academy or collecting them. I can say from personal experience that already there's very heavy congestion, and perhaps it's a wider issue than just this particular application, but you know, everything that's going to follow is going to add to that congestion, and I don't see anything coming forward in terms of remedies to that.
Okay, I'll go ask the Highways Officer to comment, obviously with the proviso that we can comment on this application and its impact, and therefore...
Yes, Chair. Well, certainly with uses of this type, they're generally comparatively dormant uses. You don't really normally expect a vast amount of activity happening, certainly during the peak hours in any event. There have been a few predictions put through that we would get no more than 10 to 15 vehicles coming, two-way movements coming out at the peak hours, morning and evening. Clearly, yes, of course, compared to the site as it is, it will add burden to the highway network. There's no denial. However, it's at such a level that it is considered reasonably manageable, and obviously we will, you know, if future developments arise, we will monitor the situation to ensure that we don't add too much detriment to the highway network. So, thank you.
If I can just add, page 98 tries to clarify this ever so slightly. The approval for St Andrews Park back in 2012 did actually assess the impact of 77 units of accommodation for extra care facilities. So we, at the time, sought lots of mitigation contributions, which are coming to the council in small chunks as the phases of development are completed. So we're not seeking any highways mitigation because we've already secured it through the main redevelopment proposals.
My only question about that was I see no evidence of that mitigation.
Well, that is a matter for elsewhere. I direct that matter in the direction of the Cabinet Member for Planning and Transportation, because that falls within his brief. So I will send it his way. Obviously, we will need to look at, though, if larger stuff comes forward on this site, then obviously the concerns are very relevant. Councillor Oswald.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I said exactly that in 2009 when this first hit the table, when these plans first hit the table. And what you've got now is, I'll get to the point in a minute, Chairman, what you've got now is roundabout, set of pedestrian lights and a roundabout. And that's causing surmountable problems, isn't it? That's where the problems are, and that's where you get all sorts of stuff backed up. Anyway, having said all that, I agree with Councillor Goddard. I think he's absolutely right. And I'm just wondering whether or not there is another way that we could look at the traffic situation there. There was talk at one time of getting rid of St Andrews roundabout altogether. Whether that is possible or not, I don't know. And maybe have a grade separated junction or something like that. Yeah, I know, a lot of money. But anyway, that's maybe in the future. Apart from anything else, Chairman, I'm quite happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Anybody else got anything, Councillor Edwards?
I don't, and I'm quite happy to second.
Okay. We're moved and seconded, subject to the one change we made to the addendum. Can all those in favour please show? Thank you. Good. We now move to items 9 and 10, which are kind of tied together. And Zainab will explain the what's going on.
Thank you, Chairman. So item 9 and 10 are related to Bridge House. I'll start with item number 9. So in July 2017, in July 2019, this application was presented to Planning Committee, and it was resolved to approve the application subject to Section 106. This application is being brought back to committee as amendments have been made to remove all the accommodation which was we don't have powers over this, but they were considered substandard at sixth floor level, and there have also been some amendments made at ground floor level, namely to increase the plant room, because the plant room has now been removed from sixth floor level, and an improved layout to the proposed bin store. The car parking levels are maintained, so there's 1.5 car parking spaces for each unit, and for the recommendation for this, Section 73 is for an approval subject to 106, but I do draw your attention to the addendum for item 9. So a revised set of plans was circulated to members, and there was a plan missing from the pack, but it was available to view online. The ground floor plan, the amended ground floor plan with the rearranged waste storage was circulated as well, and that's considered acceptable by the waste strategy officer. There was an amendment to the description of development, because as a result of the increase in plant room and the bin store being rearranged, a unit was lost, so that deals with the amended description. As a consequence, the figures within the heads of terms were also amended, so that's reported there. And then finally, there was an amendment to condition 2 to state the correct plans. So that covers item 9. Moving on to the plans, this is just showing the existing building, and this is the amended ground floor plan. The plant rooms are shown, so they're in light pink, and this is the rearranged bin store, which will allow people to access it without having to move bins. This is a typical floor plan, and I will now move on to item 10. So item 10 is the same site. What item 10 seeks to achieve is an increase, so that it's proposing to demolish the existing 6th floor and provide 2 stories of accommodation to provide an additional 25 new units. The proposal includes a policy compliant level of 35% affordable housing by habitable room. This will be secured through a Section 106 legal agreement. The proposed extension is considered to provide an appropriate standard of living accommodation, and it has an acceptable impact on the character of the building and the adjacent greenbelt land within South Buckinghamshire. The reason why this is not perceived to have an increased impact is because the existing parapets are quite high already. So the increase, as I'll show you now, is very, very minimal. So this shows you the existing plans. This is the existing roof plan. More importantly, this is the existing elevation plans and the existing sections. The proposed, there's no changes to the landscape plan that is as agreed. The ground floor plan is as per the Section 73 application to the prior approval. So again, you can see the increased plant rooms and the improved refuse store. This is the proposed elevation plan. The only increase in height is this grey above here. The remainder of the height massing remains the same, so the recommendation on this basis is for approval subject to Section 106. There is an addendum item for item 10, and I would like to draw members' attention to it. Item 10, again, it covers the amended plans. Condition 2 is amended to reflect the correct plans. There are changes to the wording of condition 11. There's an additional condition relating to refuse management and servicing, and there was a plan circulated that was superseded, and that was referenced in there, so that's been corrected, and there's been an amendment to condition 7 and 8 to ensure that secured by design doesn't just cover the building but also covers the site, and condition 7 accurately reflects the sustainable urban drainage method that we need on this site, given it's a roof extension. Finally, car parking. For clarification, as I've already explained, there is no new parking proposed at ground floor level, so if you want to flick back to the landscaping plan, the surface car parking here already exists, and there are not new car parking spaces being added here, and they will be the disabled spaces. The remainder of the spaces will be within the multi-storey car park. So that covers this application. The recommendation is for an approval subject to Section 106. I'm happy to take any questions.
I just want to jump in with 2 points. Firstly, that Bridge House has been to committee before for an extension to its roof, and that was for office use, so this is no greater than the consent we've already given for bulk and mass. And secondly, although there are no plans for the multi-storey car park, the multi-storey car park is directly to the south of this photo in the darker grey, north, just a bit north, that one. So that has surplus parking. We are therefore adding in the additional car parking just into that car park. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so for clarity, item 9 is a prior approval and changes to that, so we all know that our views are limited in that regard and we won't go there. And item 10 is a full planning application, but obviously only contains 25 units over a couple of floors. Right, so with that, Councillor Edwards.
In the absence of any questions, clarification, I see hands going up, so I'll shut up.
He was going to move off to recommendations, but yeah, go on. Councillor Duncan.
Look, this came before us as a prior approval application. Our hands are tied on those. We're not able to enforce the standards that we would normally expect of residential accommodation. On item 9, it's already there. I don't have a quarrel with that. Item 10, they're actually putting more units in at this substandard level. I'm not prepared to underwrite that.
Hang on.
Unless my understanding is incorrect.
No, I thought these were policy compliant.
So these units being provided, 25 new units being provided, are policy compliant, so they meet the standards. They are providing amenity space. They are meeting the required floor space standards, and so there are a mix of dual aspect, different size of units. On that basis, the recommendation is for approval.
We are also secure.
I can show you on plan. So if we flick
bear in mind, of
back,
course, we can only insist on it for the
yes.
25 units,
So
not for the rest of the building.
If you look around the terrace, you'll see that they all have their private balconies here. So that's where the amenity space is being provided. So it's a scale back. I mean, previously we had units in the plant room at 6th floor level, so that's been taken away. And they didn't have windows. So now we have units with windows that are, some of them are dual aspect as well, which is positive. They will have outlook, they have amenity space, and the development makes a contribution to affordable housing, and it also makes a contribution to public realm improvements, provides policy compliant level of parking, it meets accessible standards, and there are no amenity concerns. So on that basis, it's recommended for approval.
Thank you for that clarification. On that basis, my concerns are addressed. Thank you.
Okay, on that basis, we'll go back to we'll take item 9 first, unless Councillor Morse has got something.
Just a quick one. I'm disappointed at the amount of 3-bedroom accommodation, because it clearly says the private market actually wants it, which we've not done. And the only other point I make, it all goes on to Oxford Road, Councillor Goddard's point, and I find it strange we have the trip generation system. I would rather know what is the capacity of a road and what percentage of the full capacity of the road we're at every time we add something. Because St James's Park, we should have done the whole lot.
Well, bear in mind we have got very substantial S106 on this already for transport remodelling. So we've got £500,000 in the pot. So we've done okay, I think. Bear in mind it's a prior approval as well for the bulk of it. Is that okay? Okay, Councillor Edwards, were you proposing on item 9 for me?
On item 9, little we can do, and I would move officer's recommendation on that. And can I add item 10 so that we do that, and also move officer's recommendations on item 10?
Right. Do I have a seconder for item 9? Thank you. And item 10, do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Goddard. Right. We are moved and seconded on both items. So on agenda item 9, all those in favour, please show. Thank you. That one's approved. Agenda item 10, all those in favour, please show. That one's approved. Thank you very much. I move to agenda item 11, which is another variation, this time on the Fashionage project in the High Street.
So, very quick.
I can quite simply summarise. We've had a few of these in the past. We've got changes in legislation, so they're requiring changes to the mortgagee details. We're still securing everything we did in the past in terms of affordable housing, etc. So there are no material changes.
Okay, does that do, Councillor Edwards?
I'll move officer's recommendation.
Thank you. You seconding?
Yeah, I'll second, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. That one's approved. Items 12 and 13 are minor amendments to the Randalls Vine Street scheme. One obviously is the scheme, and the other is the listed building consent.
Yes. Thank you, Chair.
Then I'll talk you through what we're doing.
Items 12 and 13 will be taken together. They relate to the Randalls building on Vine Street. So the application seeks minor material amendments and listed building consent to the application approved originally in June 2017. As a result of detailed design discussions and with the contractors coming on board and changes to fire regulations, there are small amendments to the scheme that include small increase in height, which is less than a metre, and changes to materials. All of this has been discussed in detail with the planning officer and the conservation officer. This proposal will ensure the scheme can be delivered in a timely and practical way that is also viable. They reflect the building control and fire strategies and the requirements set out by subcontractors. The proposed amendments make no changes to the land use, the quantum of the development, layout, access arrangements and parking, and it will still ensure the high quality design of this building, and it will be consistent with it will contribute to the conservation area. On this basis, the recommendation is for approval, but members' attention is also drawn to the addendums for items 12 and 13. So, for items 12, condition 20 has been amended. That is to ensure the listed building, cannot be adapted, so that's not included, and the remainder of the building will meet M42 and M43 standards as required. Condition 21, in the same way, has been amended to ensure that the listed building that's been converted is not expected to meet those standards. Condition 27 is amended because there is no more to propose, so those details reflect what the conservation officer has requested. On item 13, condition 6 is to be deleted. This was considered unreasonable and unenforceable. Condition 21 is amended, again, to reflect the conservation officer's request. And condition 7 is amended because there's a small typo. So just to take you through the plans, I don't know if you can see clearly, but these plans mark out, there you go, they are marking out in green the consented height of the development and the small increase there is to height. Again in green, that's the consented, and there's a small increase. It's only a metre. The conservation officer and planning officer have had very, very detailed pre-application and application discussions with the applicant, and they're happy with the changes proposed. The detail, the building is still going to remain high quality, and I'll show you this detail here, which is the roller shutter. The roller shutter is listed, and there is a very interesting mechanism used to operate this roller shutter. So in order to preserve, but they also need to meet insulation requirements, so there's proposed to be a very fine sort of conservation glass being added, so you can still appreciate this listed roller shutter. And I'll show you there's one interesting elevation as well that I must show you. It's on the listed building. Where are we? So these listed frames here, they have reached a lifetime of their frames, and when the contractors began exploring whether these could be retained and repaired, they were too rusty, so they're doing a like-for-like replacement with the appropriate glass. The conservation's happy with those changes. So on that basis, the recommendation is for an approval subject to the deed of variation and a listed building consent, recommendation for approval for the listed building consent. I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. I only have one area of concern with this, and that is with the removal of the lift in the commercial unit. And I would like officers and maybe legal to comment on what I believe to be preventing disabled people from gaining access to both levels of a commercial property, either as a customer or as an employee. How agreeing to that is conducive with our legal requirement to give due regard to eliminate discrimination.
Which one of you wants to take it? All right, planning first, legal second.
So we have obviously amended our conditions. DDA compliance does not apply as rigorously to listed buildings because we need to take into account the heritage assets of the site. And I appreciate that's not ideal, but we do also have a ground floor that can be used, therefore the upper, so it's a dual unit. There is access at ground floor level, albeit not at first floor level.
I accept that, but there is presently access to both levels, and what we've been asked to do is remove one. So the listed building bit doesn't seem to follow to me.
General disagreement at the top of the table here?
I don't believe there is existing lift access. No, there isn't existing lift access, so what this condition would have required is would have been more onerous.
So, in other words, it's providing lift access.
Yes.
Right. So that makes sense.
Because they're not taking it away.
They're just not providing it.
Yes. They can't because it's listed or it's not technically.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So.
More intrusive.
Yes.
Sorry, the reason given here is nothing to do with anything technical or about listed buildings. It's too onerous to provide another toilet, and that just strikes me as not being conducive with our duty.
But they.
The key to this, really, in my head, is if the lift doesn't exist, I can see how that's onerous to provide it because that's a substantial piece of work in a listed building, and therefore could be difficult. But if the lift already exists, then Councillor Edwards has got a valid point. Now, there seems to be some... What page in the report are you on, Councillor?
Page 2 report. It just says it's proposed
Page
to remove
204.
proposed to remove the passenger lift. It is possible that it's either existing or intended, but the reason given is not because it is detrimental or impossible or difficult with a listed building, is because, we don't want to... Further WC provision would be required.
But wheelchair WC provision.
Which doesn't sound particularly onerous to me.
Councillor Higgins.
Through you, Chairman, is the lift as it stands accessible for...
Well, that's what it seems, because I'm getting some conflicting information.
That's where the nut of this is, isn't it?
Yeah,
if it isn't, then...
If the lift exists and is compliant, it's about providing a toilet that can be used by disabled people, effectively.
Yeah.
Which I would agree with the councillor. If the lift doesn't exist and can't be used at the moment, then that's a massive additional expense and probably complicated in a listed building. I get that. But the report, to be absolutely fair, is not explicit.
I need to be clear on the...
well, I'm not.
With the planning element, I need to understand the planning element to then provide advice as to...
Yeah, no, I know. I don't think you can at the moment. I think planners are going to either have to assure me that where we are with this lift, or I'm going to move this into the deferral pot in 2 seconds. I don't wish to, but...
If you give me a moment, I'll check the existing...
Right, okay.
There is no lift? There is no... There is no...
There's no lift in there, so it's not only the introduction of the lift into a heritage building, but the toilets that now need to be routed, so all the pipe work and the stacks, etc., to get them through and down, now need to be routed for a heritage, which is more intrusive to the building. It's not a case of just providing the toilets, but actually...
Okay, we are taking advice off developers in the meeting, which is a kind of unusual way to do this.
There is no... There is no lift in the plans as shown, and we've had confirmed that there is no existing plan, and part of why we've allowed the increase in the building is to stop any further intrusive works into this listed building. So I think its removal, because you have a double flight retail unit, does still maintain a level of access for disabled customers.
And on that basis, given you have this heritage asset, when you are looking at the Equality Act, it is a balancing exercise, and I won't repeat what Mandip has already explained, but she is correct.
Thank you. I'm comfortable recognising now that it isn't just because of a toilet. There is a far more difficult challenge in providing the lift and the toilet. I accept that, and it's clear now, and I'm comfortable with it all, and would move officer's recommendation.
Councillor Higgins, do you have something else?
Not really. I was just was going to put it forward, actually.
Oh.
There you go. I'll second it.
You'll second, okay. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much.
Same again on 13.
Can we vote for 13 as well, please? Right. So we are approving both 12 and 13. Right. Final item is another deed of variation. Seems to be a theme running through this evening.
I will summarise that this is exactly the same change as per agenda item 11. Thank you.
I move officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Seconder? Oh, hang on.
No, I just wanted to ask about this. Can you explain it a bit more? This is Waterloo Walk we're on, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Could you just explain the changes? Because it says that it's 35% all new units for affordable housing, so 70% social rent and 30% intermediate housing. So is that remaining the same and the numbers the same?
Well, the summary says no changes proposed. The overall quantity of delivery of on-site affordable housing are administered, which are to... It's about the lenders again, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So there are no changes to the affordable housing as was, yes?
Yes, as approved.
So it doesn't change the substance of what we're approving? No. I'm happy then.
Right. I'll take you as a proposer then. Councillor Oswald is a second. All those in favour, please show me. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you all for your cooperation with that one.